Sagittarius, your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 16th of February for the ascendant, the sun, or the moon. Going to share with you the big themes of the week, which is massive. Then on screen, you can see the planets at the start of the week. Those provide some context. I'll go through those. Then unpack all the blockbuster influences as they unfold, frame by frame, to give you a clear picture of what to look forwards to. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now and help it to continue to thrive. Now, right at the start of this week, we have the energy in the sign of Aquarius supplemented by the moon. And you can see the moon there is going to meet with the sun on Tuesday. We get the solar eclipse, the first in the new series, the first for 8 years, but it is in a right angle with the restless energies of Uranus, which for you has been making routine very hard to achieve over the last 7 years. So what's going to be the impact of that eclipse? But it occurs so late in the sign of Aquarius, just shy of 29 degrees. By Wednesday, the sun has relocated into the part of your chart very much to do with where you live, how you live there, your need for peace, quiet, at times seclusion, but most of all nurture, the fourth house. And you do have the lovely Venus, the North Node, and the energetic Mercury there too. What's the significance of that? And of course, recently we've seen both Saturn and Neptune move back into the sign of Aries, where they had those brief visits last year. Neptune 6 months, Saturn just over 3. And for you in the fifth house, that can be very expressive, creative, passionate. Saturn can be very conservative, and they come together in an exact conjunction on Friday for the first time in 37 years. What does that mean too? So on the screen is your event chart. Let's look first of all at your ruler Jupiter. He is continuing to be in retrograde through to the 11th of March, but he also forges a very strong link with Mercury this week. If you are talking about or thinking about anything to do with your home or a property matter, perhaps even a financial perspective around those, there's a really buoyant energy between them because Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces, as well as being the sole domiciliary ruler of your sign. And in that context, Jupiter is more about spirit. And in the eighth house, you could find yourself quarrying down to find resources, financial or emotional, to understand how change is playing out in your life. So the dialogue you have this week, I think, even if it's profound at times, it can be very meaningful too. But the moon is very close to Pluto at the start of this week. That suggests if you have conversations on Monday, you're going to mean every word that you say. And people will mean that as you express yourself, you do so with conviction. If you have got ideas to share, you can be very authoritative as the moon moves conjunct with Mars too. But you could also feel very restless and perhaps impatient if other people aren't picking up the thread. By Tuesday, the moon moves forwards and applies to the sun. We have essentially a moon cazimi, which is what a new moon solar eclipse is. The sun glows up the moon. The moon in the third house, however, kind of Gemini feel, can struggle a little bit because it's great at the cerebral stuff, conveying ideas, being quick-witted, pivoting. It's not so good at staying in touch with emotion. So just bear that in mind. But it's the square with Uranus, which is so powerful on this particular lunation. So over the next 6 months, which is the influence of the eclipse, you could find that your nervous energy is a bit hyped up. Therefore, you need to use what you do have very carefully, not scatter yourself too thinly, not give yourself too much to do. Set yourself some realistic targets, particularly if you are buzzing with enthusiasm about lots of different ideas, because what Uranus is saying, that's all well and good, but it's how they're structured that's going to be important. And you don't want to end up feeling scattered. But by Wednesday, the sun moves into the fourth house. But I think there's something hugely symbolic about this. It's the final zodiac sign, Pisces. And collectively, it's the time to be a bit more contemplative. But for you, after the hubbub and excitement and verve and buzz of all that third house energy, which has been so powerful over the last few weeks, you may indeed be in the mood for a little peace and quiet. If you book a spa day, a massage, Pisces very much about healing, a get together with some loved ones, enjoy a walk in nature, all of those things can be very soothing to your senses. But if you think about the big picture, Saturn has just completed a just over a 2 year journey through that very part of your chart. And if you have found that your home, emotional, and family situation has felt challenging, you haven't always felt it your sparkling and effervescent best, there may have been extra responsibilities, even some property or home issues. I feel that now Saturn's moved on and the sun moves in, you can reap your reward for the application that you've put in. And that's how Saturn works. The harder we work in the most efficient and effective way, eventually it will come back to us. Now, we also have one other aspect I want to tell you about for this week, and that is the fact that Chiron is in a sextile to the sun. If you do have a conversation with someone this week, very much about your talent, and if you haven't always felt very appreciated for your talents, particularly since February 19, when Chiron moved into the sign of Aries once more after its brief visit into 18, you get a chance this week to have a conversation which is very reinforcing to your sense of self. But back to the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune by Friday. What Saturn's asking you to do over the next 2 years is to work at talent. But there's no denying that Saturn can be serious and the fifth house can be playful. And it can also be to do with romance. So if you want progress around that part of life, even though we tend to see the early part of getting to know someone as being frivolous and flirty, the underlying message from Saturn is you're going to need to mean it. So it may mean that if you have got certain friendships, interests, or even romantic dalliances that are not really profoundly important, Saturn may scrutinize those and suggest that you move them out of your life. Now, Neptune in the mix is intriguing. Neptune for you, I don't feel has been easy for since 2012. Of course, 6 months last year it was in Aries, and that may have added to your creative output. But in the fourth house, there's been a lot of confusion. A lot of situations may have not seemed particularly clear, or there's been erosion around the foundational part of your security. Big changes around the players in your world, maybe through family, maybe through extended family, maybe in your community. So Neptune in moving into the fifth house, I think does provide a lot of opportunities for you. But clearly at this particular juncture, if you're doing something which is where you want to showcase your flair and artistry, very fifth house, you'll need to make sure that the hard work is there and the organization, Saturn, but don't deny yourself the right to show inspiration and creativity. But I don't think that's going to be so much of a problem for you. So to recap for this week, some powerful conversations at the start of the week. You'll be conveying your ideas with conviction for sure. But because of the solar eclipse on Tuesday, squaring off to the restless Uranus, over the next 6 months, you need to pace yourself and target your energies in a very structured way. Otherwise, you may end up feeling that you're spreading yourself too thin and could at times even feel a bit run down. But then the middle of the week is a chance for nurture and healing. The sun moving into Pisces. And giving yourself permission also to perhaps be in touch with your feelings and at times maybe even vulnerabilities. That's okay with the right people in the right settings. But that creative side of your nature, which is extremely strong, can prosper over the next couple of years, but it will require discipline and a degree of structure. And that is something that Uranus has been making rather elusive in recent years. So if you have found yourself being a bit laissez-faire around where things are and at what time you do them and so on, Saturn's really asking you to get more into a routine. Now, to understand the power of the rest of February, because it is really powerful, particularly in the last week as Mars and Uranus clash, in a way that, it could create enormous tension for us all collectively, please click on the deep dive for your February forecast on the screen. You can also discover why your ruler Jupiter can bring you fortune by the end of this month. And also, if you'd like to take advantage of my offers on my printed charts, you can get your personal forecast full 12 months from the time of order, plus your life roadmap, and apply Astro 26 at the checkout and get 50% off. If you're interested in soul or karmic astrology, you can order your draconic forecast and chart and get 50% off by adding Draco 26 at the checkout. Take care, all the best, and goodbye.